Hi, my name is Teresa Brannon. Thank you very much for attending today's webinar presentation on how to recruit and retain culturally competent staff. I am pleased to introduce Darcy Graves. Ms. Graves has over 10 years of professional and academic experience in the fields of cultural and linguistic competence, education, and public policy. She is a former faculty member at the University of Missouri-Kansas City School of Medicine. She aided in the development, implementation, and management of the diversity, spirituality, communications, and geriatrics curricula. She holds a graduate degree in communications, religion, and sociology, and public policy. She currently serves as the Senior Health Education and Policy Specialist with the Health Determinants and Disparities Practice at SRA International, Inc. As one of the senior members on the Office of Minority Health Think Cultural Health Team, she plays a key role in the development and maintenance of cultural and linguistic competency education and policy initiatives. With professional, academic, and volunteer experience in the areas of communications, religion, spirituality, race, ethnicity, language, sexual orientation, gender identity, and socioeconomic status, she brings a unique and inclusive perspective to the field. Ms. Graves.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and welcome to all of those who are on the call today. We're going to talk today about how to recruit and retain a diverse workforce and how that helps create a more culturally competent organization. As Teresa indicated, I have a number of years of experience in the areas of cultural and linguistic competency, from working with medical students to police officers, nonprofits, and state and federal employees. The group that I work with on the HHS Office of Minority Health program, again, as she said, addresses all of these cultural and linguistic competency education and policy initiatives, which I'll highlight a little bit more at the end of this presentation, just to make sure that we leave everyone with resources with which to implement some of the things that we're talking about today. Which brings us to our learning objectives. For today's presentation and discussion, I have outlined 4 overall learning objectives. We want to talk about why this issue is an important one, describe the elements which aid in the development of a successful diversity and inclusion plan, identify techniques and practices for recruiting a diverse workforce, and identifying techniques and practices for retaining that workforce, because it is equally important that once you have recruited them, that you are able to keep them within your organization to truly take advantage of all of the skill sets that individuals have to offer. So before we begin our discussion on why recruiting and retaining a diverse workforce is important, I want to make sure that we address some topics, some terminology and concepts to ensure that we are all on the same page, so to speak. Today's presentation and many discussions around the importance of cultural competency and workforce diversity is built upon the following premise, that diversity plus inclusion equals innovation. And that's really going to be the underpinning for our discussion today. But when I say diversity, what is it that we mean? We mean a collection of individual attributes that together help agencies, well, workforce diversity is a definition of a collection of individual attributes that together help agencies pursue organizational objectives efficiently and effectively. So this collective set of attributes is very similar to the definitions of culture that we use both for the Think Cultural Health and other initiatives. Culture includes characteristics such as national origin, language, race, color, disability, ethnicity, gender, age, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, socioeconomic status, veteran status, as well as family structures. So it's very important to take away that diversity or culture is much more than what sometimes is referred to as just the visible diversity, the diversity that you can see when you're just looking around the conference table, so to speak. Now, the Venn diagram you see on the right-hand side of your screen is a model that I came up with many years ago while I was teaching these topics at a medical school. And the reason for the Venn diagram is to illustrate the overlay of all of these aspects of culture. Rarely do we experience things through one cultural lens, because we all possess a race, a sexual orientation, age, gender, etc. Therefore, we all have multiple cultural lenses we look through. I experience things myself as a white, straight, middle-class woman from Missouri because I am all of those things, and I cannot tease apart my lens to look at things just as a woman or just as an individual, a Caucasian individual, or just as someone from the Midwest. So these are just some of the reasons why developing skills of cultural competency is so key, because you need to be able to converse with individuals to determine what their various cultural or diverse lenses may be. So being able to converse with your patient, client, colleague, friend, and determine the way they are looking at the world to help understand their point of view, because that's what's going to drive how they, if they're a patient, how they seek care, if they are a colleague, how maybe they approach their work, or how they communicate about concerns, questions, or any of those things. So then we move on to the concept of inclusion. And inclusion, or an inclusive environment, is something that is a culture that connects each employee to the organization, encourages collaboration, flexibility, and fairness. It leverages diversity throughout the organization, and all of this results in an environment or a culture where all individuals are able to participate and contribute to their full potential. So inclusion means sharing values as a collective while still being valued as an individual. And this is the part where I'll go out on a limb and I'll make a Star Trek reference. My brother is very into Star Trek, and I have gleaned this from him. But it's important to think about that we're talking about inclusion rather than assimilation. And for those, if there are any Trekkies on the call, then they have you know about this species on Star Trek that wants everyone to assimilate and therefore think the same and behave the same and develop a hive mentality, if you will. Assimilation is the process by which a person or persons acquire the social and psychological characteristics of the group. And we're not talking about assimilation. Again, we're talking about creating an environment where everyone is able to participate as individuals, but they share the values of the organization themselves. So the diversity plus inclusion equals innovation. And innovation, if you just look it up in the dictionary, means something new or different, the act of innovating, introducing new things or methods. So moving away from the status quo, moving away from the mentality, and I know we've all had these colleagues and coworkers in the past who say, well, but this is the way we've always done it. And if it's not broken, don't fix it. And those sorts of cliche sayings. Just because it's not broken doesn't mean it can't be enhanced. It can't be improved upon. Doing new ways may bring about additional creativity and new solutions that haven't been thought about before. So that's where we're trying to head, is to this area where we do move through things more efficiently and effectively as a cohesive and collective whole. diverse workplaces increase so many things. It increase responsiveness to customers, relations with the surrounding community, an ability to cope with change. As I said before, creativity and exposure to new ideas. Diverse workforces drive economic growth as a whole. If you just look at the increase in women in the overall share of the labor force in the United States, over the past 40 years, they have increased, women's representation has increased 10%, but has accounted for a quarter of the current GDP. A diverse workforce can help capture a greater share of the consumer market by bringing together individuals from different backgrounds and experiences. Businesses and hospitals can more effectively market to consumers from different backgrounds. Women, consumers who may belong to some of those other cultural groups we referenced earlier. Recruiting from a diverse pool of candidates means, on the whole, a more qualified workforce, because when companies and hospitals and healthcare settings recruit from a diverse set of potential employees, they are more likely to hire the best and the brightest that are available in the market. Diversity fosters a more creative and innovative workforce, bringing together workers with different qualifications, backgrounds, experiences, ages, so that you have generational perspectives that are different, are all key to effective problem solving. And then businesses need to adapt. Then there's just the kind of the cut and dry, the bottom line reality check is business. Companies and healthcare hospitals need to adapt to the changing nation. By 2050, I'm sure most of us have heard this, there will be no racial or ethnic majority in the United States. And furthermore, by 2050, new immigrants and their children will account for nearly or over 80% of the growth in the working age population. So by making sure that your hospital or your clinic or your healthcare organization now is promoting and developing a diverse and inclusive work environment, you are preparing yourself and you're preparing your organization for success moving forward. The last concept, if you will, that I want to talk about before we get into more of the nitty-gritty is the concepts of fair versus equal. And, we all, as Americans and as individuals, we're all taught to embrace equality as the ultimate goal for everything, but in many times, fair does not equal equal, and equal does not equal fair. So we have to make sure that, we're not, equality and fairness does not mean treating everyone the same. It means making sure that systems are ready to deal and to be able to handle with diversity. So, like as you can see in the cartoon, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. So trying to be fair, they're telling this diverse group of animals here that they need to climb the tree. Well, that may be equal, but it's certainly not fair because everyone, again, has the different skill sets. Another take on this is the quote from Albert Einstein, "Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid." So when we're looking at these things, this isn't about making sure, well, we treat everyone the same. It's, it's fantastic. It's a blind sort of experience. That's not what this is about. It's about making sure that there is fairness and recognition that we all bring different things to the table. So now I want to move on to the discussion related to our second learning objective about describing the elements which aid in the development of a successful diversity and inclusion plan. Diversity and inclusion strategic plans should be designed to create a culture which values trust and human dignity, provides the opportunity for personal development as well as self-fulfillment, and while simultaneously moving towards the attainment of your organization's mission and goals. This slide illustrates some of the components that could or should appear in your hospital's diversity plan. It is equally important to note, though, that diversity and inclusion efforts should be included in all of the strategic plans, efforts, etc., that your organization produces. Diversity and inclusion shouldn't be viewed as an add-on, but as part of the process all along. The analogy I used to use with college students is that diversity and inclusion isn't a single course or a gen ed requirement that you get to take and then mark off the list. History, check, math, check, English, check. It needs to be thought of as culturally competent history, culturally competent math, and culturally competent English literature. Because all of those things need to be culturally and linguistically appropriate. So as your organization looks at cultural and linguistic competency, it isn't about adding to the to-do list. It's about examining the to-do list and tweaking what you're already doing to make sure that it is culturally and linguistically appropriate. So that said, today we're focused specifically on workforce elements in your various plans, so that the following examples relate specifically to those issues, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention those bigger picture issues. So one of the things that your diversity and inclusion plan should include is vision and mission statements that relate to these topics. And these two examples come from the federal government-wide diversity and inclusion plan. And their sample vision statement is to be the nation's model employer by leveraging diversity and fostering inclusion to deliver the best public service. So they've encompassed the values that they want to have in going forward. And then their mission statement is to recruit, retain, and develop a diverse, high-performing federal workforce that draws from all segments of society and values fairness, diversity, and inclusion. So those are just two samples of things that your organization may want to model. But as with all things in diversity and inclusion, your institution needs to figure out what is specific to your institution, what makes sense, what is your mission and vision. And in that same vein, what are the goals for your organization as it relates to workforce diversity and workplace inclusion? Again, these are three sample goals taken from the federal plan. Again, looking at a diverse, qualified group of potential applicants to secure high-performing workforce that draws from all segments of American society. Workplace inclusion, cultivate a culture that encourages collaboration, flexibility, and fairness to enable individuals to contribute to their full potential, and further retention. So making sure, again, that we're keeping the individuals that we bring in to the organization. And then finally, making sure that this is sustainable, developing the structures and strategies to equip leaders with the ability to manage diversity, be accountable, measure results, refine approaches on the basis of the data, and institutionalize, again, this culture of inclusion. The three goals listed are necessary aspects for the successful growth of diversity and inclusion within your hospitals or health centers. Other characteristics of diversity and inclusion plans include looking at aspects of leadership, accountability, measurement, and training as they relate to these goals, or possibly even separate goals unto themselves. So I've worked at a number of institutions where they have entitled their diversity and inclusion plans Diversity in Action because it has momentum and it has vigor. But quickly, sometimes all too quickly, diversity in action becomes diversity in action. So, not only do you have to develop great plans, but then you have to follow through on the said plans. So for plans to succeed, change needs to happen from the top down and the bottom up. As an institution, you always need to be thinking about all aspects of the organization as you think about diversity and inclusion, and vice versa. So it shouldn't be tied to one unit in the hospital or health center. It shouldn't be tied to one individual. Diversity is not, again, a general education course that you can just check off. Everything that you do can be made more culturally and linguistically appropriate or competent. You need to have resources to make sure that you can implement and sustain these plans. And resources include dollars, but they also mean people and time. And people and time from, again, throughout the organization, not just one person in one office who is called in when things need to be made more diverse or more culturally competent, or to make sure that you've checked that box that that person was at the table, but having a holistic view of all of this. Making sure that everyone in your organization is educated about the importance of these topics. Engaging all individuals to review and develop appropriate policies throughout the organization and throughout all of the standard operating procedures. And is with the mantra of most organizational goals and tasks. Diversity and inclusion is a shared responsibility, but individuals need to be held accountable. And as with everything, things need to be, these efforts need to be measured and evaluated, and then those results need to be analyzed, and then things need to be changed accordingly, and then you repeat that process once again. So now we get into the real meat and crux of our discussion today, and looking at techniques for recruiting a diverse workforce. So you have created the most amazing job description. You have posted it out into the world, and so individuals see that you have this opening, and they want to see if you are an organization that they want to work for. And remember, we're looking for, individuals are looking for this inclusive environment in which everyone feels safe, supported, encouraged, and able to express their views and or concerns. So what does your organization, before they even, draft their cover letter or fill out the online application form, when they're going in to see what your organization is all about, what does your organization say to them before they've even engaged with an individual? What do your public spaces say? If somebody walked into your health center or hospital's lobby, what does it say? What does the art on the wall say? What does your signage say? What does the literature available in the waiting room say? Does it say, our organization is comprised of all of these different individuals, and our patient population is reflected in the art and the decor that we choose to put on our walls? Is it a welcoming environment? If you're coming in and you have a disability, can you access things easily? If you're in a wheelchair, can you reach the brochures that you're looking for? If you are a senior citizen or an older adult, is the publications, are they easy for you to turn even though your hands are a little bit arthritic? So thinking about just what your organization says non-verbally, your outreach, are you using, if you're using clip art or images from iStock or Microsoft Office or what have you, what do those images convey? Are the images that you're selecting reflective of the values of your organization? I get a mailer, and if everybody on the image on the mailer is a bunch of old white men, that tells me something, as opposed to a eclectic, diverse group of individuals. When you're doing your messaging, when you're putting your ads out there to recruit individuals from these communities, from different communities, are you using the available targeted media, specific television shows or television channels, radio, print, community newspapers? Have you looked at or connected with key informants and community leaders in the groups that you're hoping to bring in to your institution? Have you established two-way communication with all of the communities within your service area? And then, one of the first things I do is I look at an organization's website. What does their website tell me about their institutional values? Because that is just as public of a space these days, if not more so, than your lobby or your waiting room. So can I find the diversity statement? Do I see an equal opportunity statement? If I were to click on the who we are button and images of your leadership and key staff members or even board of directors are on there, who am I going to see? Am I going to see diversity present in these different ranks, or is it more homogeneous? So everything we do as an institution sends messages. So thinking about what your organizational nonverbals are, and then knowing what your reputation is within the communities, within the, out in the public. Is your institution viewed as an ally, or are they viewed as an interloper? And trying to figure out, if you are an ally, maximizing that. And if you are viewed as a threat or someone who is not open to them, figuring out how to change that perception. So that gets us to the nuts and bolts of recruitment specifically. Making sure that you design and implement a plan which reaches all aspects of the society you're trying to bring in. And making sure, again, assessing the effectiveness of the processes already in place and figuring out how to improve upon them. Look at your current advertisements. Do they only speak to one type of individual, or are they fairly inclusive in what folks are looking for these days? Identify what differentiates the job seeker's career decision-making techniques. Make sure that the individuals who are crafting these messages knows what the end user is looking for. Make sure to align your campaign with your organizational goals. Showing what you mean, that you mean what you say. Find out what the job seekers need and tailoring your message to increase response rates. And again, be careful not to use images that send the wrong message. You want to make sure that you are communicating what you intend to communicate. So, sometimes that means doing focus groups or sample interviews or surveys of your your current patient population or other key informants that can help guide what you are trying to achieve. So our final learning objective topic for today is to reflect on techniques and best practices for retaining your diverse workforce. So, walking the talk, demonstrating by doing, realizing that diversity needs to be woven into all aspects of the organization. And this is not a one-time or of the month sort of occurrence. If any of you have seen Office Space, wearing Hawaiian shirts on Friday does not qualify as a cultural or diversity event. It really needs to be a lived and shared value. Doing an International Day to boost employee morale, great. If that's the only reflection of diversity and inclusiveness, maybe not as great. So follow through. When you've connected with the community, when you've reached out to them to find out what their needs are in terms of the recruitment process, make sure that you keep those doors open and that you're not just talking to them that singular time. Bring the employees in from the community and bring the employees out to the community if they come from different backgrounds, making sure that your employees are aware of all the communities that you hope to serve. Support, if you've brought somebody in, make sure that they have, that you're supporting their efforts to fulfill all of their needs in their life as they're settling into your institution, whether that be housing or registering children for school, locating local stores and services, just welcoming them to the neighborhood, so to speak. And, aligning them with activities that may be of interest, whether that be a church or a synagogue or a community center, making sure that your employee feels welcome, and connected both to your institution as well as to the community they have now settled in and decided to call home. Mentoring, making an employee feel welcome extends or should extend well beyond the orientation that you receive on the first day. So you need to continue efforts to welcome new employees beyond that introductory time. And mentoring is a great way of doing that. And it could be an employee who shares the same cultural background as the institution, as the new employee, or it may be somebody from a different cultural background but shares the same interests or career goals. Making sure that the individual, the new employee, has someone to share experiences with and to serve as a sounding board, as well as somebody to guide and help them understand the unwritten culture or hidden rules of your institution, and provide the networking opportunities that everybody needs to feel connected, to help get their day-to-day tasks done. And as I was doing the research and I was pulling together this information, I found an article about reverse mentoring, which is why the slide reads mentoring forward and in reverse. So forward is kind of our historic view of mentorship, somebody who has been in the trenches and has now climbed the ladder of the organization. They've been there for a while, and they're gonna help that individual up. But there was this concept that I came across that I thought could be very valuable about reverse mentoring. So, making sure that somebody who is brought in could be paired with someone who is different from him or herself. That the mentor could be, that your mentor could be younger and less experienced, but still have something to offer. So they may differ in terms of age, gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, and so on. But that this mentorship relationship serves as a safe place in which delicate questions can be asked, with the answers hopefully leading to a work environment that is more comfortable for everyone and optimizes on the strengths that diversity can bring. Times, as they say, times they are a-changing. And younger workers and individuals now entering the workforce have grown up in a more diverse environment than the preceding generations. So, them being aware of and respectful to people's differences is something that comes to them more inherently, more naturally, because it's been part of their everyday lived experience, and they don't carry with them so many of the aspects of tension, racial, or ethnic tension that may exist in previous generations. So partnering and mentoring, creating a mentorship between younger individuals and some of the older individuals in your institution as they come in can help open up those dialogues and provide some new insights that the young people probably don't even know is an issue, because, again, things have always been this way for them, and they're not aware of the struggle and strife that it took to get there. If diversity in your institution is concentrated in just the, to use the latter metaphor, just in the lower rungs, that may be an indication to examine your promotion process, or it might just reflect that the new generations of hires simply are more diverse than the previous ones. So making sure that you're aware of that process. Being diverse, on the first and second tier, but not being diverse on the third and fourth, does not make your institution necessarily as diverse and inclusive as it could be. You need to make sure, or the institution needs to make sure, that the ability to get to those third and fourth rungs exists. So, senior executives or senior leadership in your institution may need to be made more aware of the various needs, mores, and cultural attitudes of their staff, which have come in later and has probably changed a lot since they began the climbing of that ladder, again, so to speak. Professional development, support learning and mobility. Individuals need to be able to move up and move into new areas within the institution to help feel valued and appreciated for the efforts that they have put in. Ensuring that there are opportunities for continuing education and additional training to be sure that promotion opportunities are transparent and open to all of the applicants. Making sure that diversity is welcome in all levels of your hospital or healthcare center. Promote regular staff training and making sure that that training includes aspects of diversity and promotes understanding of different life experiences and points of view. Again, this doesn't have to be and shouldn't be just about visible diversity, and shouldn't feel, as some might categorize it, as a kumbaya sort of thing. This isn't about everyone getting along. This is about making sure that lines of communication are open, that individuals and leaders are aware of the needs and concerns of all those involved, whether they belong in the in the majority, quote unquote, majority or minority areas. recognizing that many of your workforce, may have not come into contact with people from, different cultural backgrounds, depending on where your institution is located. And so therefore, it may be appropriate for education to include education that emphasizes understanding, empathy, and critical thinking skills that builds their ability to succeed in a multicultural environment. Because again, these things are constantly evolving, and what you may perceive as nothing new, this may be life-altering to other individuals. Employee engagement. Ensuring that lines of communication are open. Recognizing that differences will arise and that differences can lead to positive growth rather than conflict. Make sure that you're creating structures that encourage and support conflict resolution and doesn't just negate or sweep under the rug any conflicts that may arise. Bring together focus groups of employees that represent your different cultural groups and find out what is working and what is not. And acknowledge that differences and understandings will arise, but build a culture that supports openness, listening, and active resolution of the issues. In that same breath, make sure that you avoid tokenism, though. Don't make diverse employees feel like that their only contribution is based on their aspect of their singular cultural lens. So not just their skin color, not just their sexual orientation, but they are invited to be on committees and decision-making groups of all kinds, in addition to the diversity ones, if they are so inclined. But making sure that their interests and their strengths are addressed, and not just the diversity, because as we all know, as individuals, we are much more than any one of those aspects that was on that Venn diagram. So making sure that we value all of our employees for all aspects of that diagram. Being open to new points of view, not assuming that the way it's always been done is the best way. Diverse perspectives are healthy for organizations in this growing and changing economy, and as our healthcare system grows and evolves, as does our patient population, so should those individuals that we are trying to bring in to work with us. Recognizing that everyone has different cultures and different experiences, and even if somebody shares the same cultural background, their experiences may be vastly different. And be sure that you involve all of the staff. Again, this has to come up from the top down and the bottom up, and make sure that the commitment to diverse employees involves every member of the organization. The point of having this diverse workforce is not simply to feel like a mini UN, but to take advantage of the presence of diverse ideas. So before we move on to, we open this up for further discussion, and we've filled your minds with all of these different concepts and nuances and ideas, I want to make sure that I leave you with some resources that might help with the implementation of these topics and issues. We've gone through quite a bit of information in about 45 minutes or so, so I want to make sure that I can point you towards some resources that I'm aware of. There are tons of resources out there, so this is just the tip of the iceberg. Make sure that you look to disciplines just beyond health. In putting together this presentation, I looked at things from law, higher education, human resources, philanthropy, as well as healthcare organizations and institutional information. Some of the information from the presentation came from the National Center for cultural competence at Georgetown University. Some of it came from the work that I do for Think Cultural Health at the Office of Minority Health. Some of you may be aware of another OMH initiative, which is the National Standards for Culturally and Linguistically Appropriate Services in Health and Healthcare. And those are getting ready to be reissued here shortly. And so, and there's a section in the standards dedicated to governance, leadership, and workforce, and making sure that they, that a diverse workforce is present, that the individuals are well trained, and that you're really pulling from the communities you're trying to serve. I also got stuff from Diversity Council of Rochester, Minnesota, which is a nonprofit, and then an article in American Banker magazine yielded a lot of yielded some neat examples. So, when you're thinking about diversity and inclusion, be willing and able to look at it from a diverse set of lenses, because all of our cultural and societal institutions are working through, I don't want to say struggling, but are working through trying to address, embrace, and move towards this more diverse and inclusive environment. So seeing the different perspectives may provide insight into how to best address things within your own institution. So, as I said, I help support the efforts on the HHS Office of Minority Health Think Cultural Health site. The site is comprised of a bunch of different assets, but the National CLAS standards, we have a suite of e-learning programs that address cultural and linguistic competency from a variety of professional point of views. They are all accredited, free, and online, so that really provides, if you really want to drill down into a particular aspect of cultural and linguistic competency, those are some great opportunities. We have Join the CLIC, and CLIC stands for the Center for Linguistic and Cultural Competency in Healthcare, which is pronounced CLIC. And that is, a quarterly newsletter, access to additional resources, such as the community calendar and Ask the Expert feature, and some other pieces that help you feel more connected to the cultural and linguistic community. And then we have the CLAS Clearinghouse, which is a collection of resources online. You can click on communication tools or language access, and it'll pull up a whole variety of organizations or of resources and tools that are available. Again, here's the National CLAS Standards, and with their relaunch in the next few weeks, hopefully, it also is accompanied by a document called what we refer to as the Blueprint, and this is really a step-by-step process that walks you through each of the standards, purpose, description, strategies, and resources on how to implement the standards, providing that additional guidance, providing that additional insight. And again, as I said, there is one whole theme dedicated to governance, leadership, workforce, and the recruitment and retention of these diverse workforces. Looks like we have about 10 minutes left, but in case we don't get any questions, or you don't have a question now but you think of one later, my email address is on the left. The URL for the Think Cultural Health site appears on the right. And with that, I will turn things back over to Teresa, who I believe is going to help moderate the questions today.
Hi, Darcy. Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. We do have a few questions that came through. I believe you did answer one of them already. Jessica Santos has asked, can you provide the link to that federal government's plan that is being referenced? And I believe you just did reference to that.
Yes.
Okay, Great. Okay. And then from Rachel Logan, she asked, which training modules are most effective when training and teaching diversity in the workplace and cultural competence?
Again, it depends on your goals specifically. The ones that I referenced on Think Cultural Health are geared towards helping providers work with diverse populations, but I know that HRSA has some cultural and linguistic competency trainings on their site, and I can and maybe you can shoot me an email if there's a slightly more specificity to what training you're hoping to provide, and I can better target that information. As you might imagine, there are a ton of diversity and inclusion exercises, tools, learning opportunities out there. So to best answer that question, I'd want a few more details.
Okay, and here's another question. Should older adult employees receiving special or different training than training for younger generations?
I mean, generational perspectives are key in are a key element of diversity and inclusion training, and I think there could probably be, you know, this is the part where I would say a both and. It may be if those differences are appearing around a particular topic, bringing in multi-generational training groups into the training and having, and I don't want to necessarily say the younger folks and the older folks, but having the differences expressed, you know, around those issues in a safe setting, so that everyone is made more aware of those differences, so that the young individuals or the younger individuals are aware of the perceptions of the older individuals, and vice versa. I'm not sure I would ever, and again, everything is a case-by-case basis, but as a whole, I don't know if I would single out one group to teach them about another group, but making sure that you know, everyone is included or addressed in some way or fashion.
Okay. Let's see. Another question is, what are some specific ways you can write a culturally targeted job ad?
That is an excellent question, and I don't have the answer off the top of my head, but I can certainly pull some information together. But again, it's making sure, off the top of my head, some key things would be making sure that you have inclusive language, making sure you know, that the images, if there's images involved, that they represent what it is that you're hoping, that you believe your organization reflects. And I can see if I can find an example or two, like I did with the vision and mission statements. There might be some floating out there that might make it a little bit easier and less esoteric, if you will.
Okay. Another question, how do you test or assess for cultural competence? What tools or strategies does one use to determine cultural competence?
Again, great questions. There's kind of a classic mantra in the field of cultural competence that it's a journey and not a destination. So you don't ever wake up one day and say, "Aha! Today I am culturally and linguistically competent." But there are assessment tools out there. The National Center for Cultural Competence at Georgetown University, the first bullet on here, they have a great set of assessment tools, both for the individual and as well as your institution, for things to look at. making sure that individuals have received the training that we discussed, making sure that individuals are made aware of differences and perspectives. And this is just as the groups that we're working with are dynamic, this is a dynamic field. So things are changing regularly. In terms of specific, and I apologize that this isn't a more linear answer, but institutions such as the Joint Commission, the National Quality Forum, and the National Committee for Quality Assurance, and NQF and NCQA, they have all issued cultural and linguistically or multicultural sorts of standards or recommendations within the last year or two. I believe it's NQF has developed a number of metrics that relate to their standards as well as cultural and linguistic competency. You know, and again, there's somewhat of a case-by-case basis because a hospital or a health center in Manhattan is going to be very different than a health center in Des Moines, Iowa, in terms of what metrics apply, but both institutions need to make sure that they are diverse, inclusive, and culturally and linguistically appropriate, albeit they'll be in very different ways just because they're working with very different patient populations.
Okay, and this, I have a question. It's a two-part question. Did you surface any differences in how to do this work based on the sector, for example, hospitals, community health centers, or home care, and et cetera?
No, nothing that, the short answer is no. The principles are the same, even in looking at the other disciplines that I mentioned earlier, looking at law and human resources and those sorts of things. The principles are the same. Sometimes the perspectives or the approaches differ slightly. Sometimes the language, the terminology or the jargon may differ slightly, but all in all, the principles are the same.
Okay, and the second part of that question is, did you see how people assess or measure and evaluate this work? What does that look like, or are there directions of resources to understand this component?
Again, I again point to some of the work from the Joint Commission and NQF, you know, looking at what they are quantifying as a diverse workforce. But again, it's going to be there's going to be some of that case-by-case basis because Des Moines, Iowa, and Los Angeles, California, and St. Louis, Missouri have three very different demographic backgrounds, and therefore, you know, who you're recruiting and the patients' populations that you're seeing are going to differ wildly. Yeah, so it's there are some overarching goals that I think, again, Joint Commission, NQF, and a few other organizations have articulated in terms of measurable outcomes or goals, but because this is still growing and evolving, everything is still very much, and the recognition that resources differ, populations differ, and what you're looking for differs. There isn't a end-all be-all or an all-encompassing metric system at this time.
Okay, and then this is just a comment, it's not a question. Somebody has written this comment, our diversity inclusion training include age diversity dealing with all of the age groups. So they just wanted you to know. that
Okay.
they include everything.
Great.
And I believe that's it of the questions. Unless, is there any other questions, Devin?
No, that's all.
Okay. I want to thank Darcy Graves for taking her time and presenting this webinar on a really important topic, recruiting and retaining culturally competent staff. And I thank all the attendees that have that joined our presentation. And I just would like to let everyone know that we are hosting our annual public housing national, our Health Centers and Public Housing National Symposium in Denver, Colorado from June 4th through June 6th. We will have registration information up on our website soon, and we are calling for abstracts. So please send us your abstracts. Our deadline is February 4th. And if you have any questions, contact me or contact one of our talented staff members at 703-812-8822. Thank you. Have a good day.